As you probably already know, my name is Jake Omen.
Jake Omen has made a great impact in CCW, but who is Jake Omen in real life?
I don't think there's a difference. The Jake Omen you see in the ring is the Jake Omen you see out of the ring. Like, I don't even believe in that when I'm in the ring or in front of the crowd that it's me cranked up a notch by any means. Like, the Jake Omen you see in the ring is the same Jake Omen you see out of the ring. It's the same. When he's not wrestling, when he's not in the ring, he's at the gym. He's kickboxing. He's doing jujitsu. He's lifting weights. Occasionally, he's even running, even though he hates running. He'd much rather just be grappling and training that way. Yeah, when Jake Omen's not in the ring, Jake Omen's in the gym.
Impressive, this Jake Omen. What sets him apart from other wrestlers?
Jake Omen set apart because of his intensity, uh, his believability. Because you don't question me. Like with the first question, Jake Omen is Jake Omen. Jake Omen's not playing a part. I just bring the fight. I just bring the real. I bring the intensity as much as I can. And I've been all around the world. I've trained with some of the best martial artists and wrestlers there are. So every single person I've met along my way has helped bring something else out of me. So I love showing that intensity and that wrestling skill and that fighting ability every time I step in the ring. Jake Omen just wants to be on the road. I love living on the road. If I could be in a different city every night, that would be the goal. I love certain cities in particular. I love Copenhagen. I love Dublin. I love Budapest, Tokyo. More than anything, those are places I would love to be in the next few months. But also, just I like to be new places. I've never been to Russia. I've yet to wrestle in Finland. I've yet to wrestle in Italy. I've never wrestled anywhere in Africa. So I really just want to be in a different country as much as possible, a different city as much as possible. I want to mix it up with the best athletes everywhere I go.
Rumors say that Jake Omen has been wrestling in Japan. I hope he can tell us a story or two.
The Japanese style of professional wrestling is the hardest hitting form of professional wrestling there is. And every single Japanese professional wrestler is pretty much beat senselessly from day one. So it ingrains a type of heart in them. There's no quit from day one. So their entire life is based around working harder than every single other person around them and never quitting, never stopping. And that's what you see when you watch Japanese professional wrestling. The strong style that they call it are these guys going out there and beating each other within an inch of their lives and never giving up, taking more punishment than a normal man can take and getting back up and giving more punishment and taking more punishment. Every single blow that I've taken over there could be the equivalent of two or three from a typical American wrestler or some of the typical European wrestlers. Those guys don't half-ass anything at all. And training over there every day, them not taking no for an answer or not taking no for any excuse has changed the way I live my entire life and the way I do everything in the ring.
What is Japanese strong style?
Strong style, I think, means a few things. I think people assume that it means more stiff, like more heavy hitting on everything. And a little bit that's true, I feel. But I think strong style is more exemplary of the heart of every performer, whereas they can take an immense amount of punishment and yet not quit, not back down, and keep moving forward. So to me, it more exemplifies what they might refer to as fighting spirit, and that's strong style. It's giving every single thing you have, taking every single thing your opponent has, and keeping going. That being said, the way that they train so intensely at all times, there's no 50%, there's no 70%, there's no 80%. That the blows you take are significantly harder. I think that's what most people associate strong style with being, but I think it's the heart as much, if not more, than the actual power behind the strikes. I believe that in Japan, everyone has 100% competition in mind. Like, and the Japanese professional wrestlers aren't worried about the show or necessarily entertaining as much as they are competing and fighting. So the show becomes second to them. Obviously, there are performers that love the show and the entertainment. For every there's the Hiromus or whatever and the Okadas who appreciate being entertainers. However, they're much more about the competition. But when the bell rings, you'll see a Japanese performer looking only at their opponent. You don't see them messing around or screwing around. Uh, Whereas in American wrestling, I believe that a lot of performers can get overcome with the fire of the crowd and that energy and that flash, and they try and add the pomp and circumstance, which might be unnecessary in terms of competing or trying to win the match. And even Europeans, to a lesser extent, um, maybe don't have 100% of the focus in terms of competition, whereas they like the adulation of the crowd and they like to feed right back on the crowd and go over the top with taunting.
Japanese wrestling tends to be more.
In a way, by them doing more, it's actually more of a story and more emotion. Because if you watch two competitors that have been embroiled in a long feud, they might be doing tons of moves to each other at the end. However, every single one has a purpose. Whereas if Jake Omen fights a CCW wrestler like, say, a Carlos Zamora, then he might be able to win his match with a Shining Wizard. However, the next time we fight, Carlos is going to know that Shining Wizard is coming, and he could counter it with another maneuver of his own, and that could end that match. Well, the more and more this goes on, eventually every opponent has learned from that prior experience and that prior fight. And they also will know what will and will not put an opponent away. So Japan is one of the few places where you might see somebody hit a devastating finishing maneuver, immediately pick their opponent back up and hit another one instead of going for a pinfall. It's not because they're just doing moves to want to do moves, but they know the heart in their opponent won't let their opponent cease at that moment. So they'll pick them back up and try and finish off with another maneuver. I would actually argue that the storytelling over there is, in general, better because it's based on that pure competition. It just can seem like it's moves for the sake of moves when an outsider is watching and doesn't have any idea of the history. That being said, the Japanese fans, too, have the most critical eye as far as any fans in the world. So those fans are watching this and they know the entire backstory. Whereas I could watch one match with no story and appreciate the match for what it was. The Japanese fan that follows, say, a New Japan, might know the 3 years build up to that match. So they may know the 3 years it took for Naito and Okada to finally get to that point and what Naito had to go through to get to that match. So every single fan there knows the backstory 100%. So to them, it's amplified even more, and they understand every reversal and every move.
How did Jake Omen cross path with the notorious CCW promotion?
Uh, how did I cross paths with the CCW promotion? Many years ago, during my first international trip to Europe in 2014, I wrestled in southern Sweden, and the next day I wrestled in Copenhagen. And during those two shows, I met the Copenhagen Hangman and I met Chaos, which led to a friendship with the Copenhagen Hangman. So I kept close tabs on everything that happened in Denmark ever since 2014, and I kept in contact with Hangman, and he would let me know the state of affairs in Denmark and in Copenhagen. So years later, when the opportunity came to return to Denmark and do what I do best, I couldn't be happier, and I had a very good idea of all the competition that CCW had to offer. Immediately upon the offer to return to Denmark, I knew the 3 or 4 professional wrestlers that I wanted to mix it up with the most.
If Jake Omen was the owner of CCW, what would he do to reach higher levels?
I believe that I would reach out to all of the professional wrestlers with an offer to increase their training, with an offer to help increase their ability to promote themselves and to promote the company. And I would see who takes me up on that offer, and those people I would hone kind of in my own image, and those that don't, I would like to face off with in the ring to see if I can bring something out of them, to see if I can bring them uh, to my closer to my image and to my understanding.
Any advice for up-and-comers in the minority of Denmark?
Train every day. Train every day that you can. Be in a professional wrestling ring as much as you can. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the European professional wrestlers and performers don't have as much opportunity to get in a ring to train and to get into the ring and perform and to compete as much as, say, an American professional wrestler does. I'm very lucky in the fact I could have 5 shows every week if I wanted. So I'd encourage them to try and get into the ring and train as much as possible. I would also encourage them all to throw themselves into martial arts as heavy as possible. Um, I think a well-rounded base of skills in every martial art only helps. If there's one that they like more than the others in particular, maybe throw themselves into that even more and really hone that. If they really want to be the world's best jiu-jitsu practitioner or grappler, go for it. If they want to be the best kickboxer, go for it. But I think they need to round out all of those skills. That will only help them in terms of professional wrestling and in creating an identity. And with a unique identity and character comes marketability and promotion, the ability to really stick out more. And then on top of that, I would say travel every single place you can, every single new place you can. I don't care if it's a tiny little city only 50 kilometers away or if it's a country a 6-hour flight away. You travel every single place you can. Even if you're not on the show, show up, because every single person that you compete against or compete with or can watch at any other location will teach you something. A big part of the reason I've tried to be everywhere I have in the world is just because I know that if I step into the ring in Denmark, I'm going to learn something from that opponent. I learned a lot from Nitro Green when I wrestled Nitro Green. I was in Budapest, Hungary, right before that match, and I learned a lot from a hardcore wrestler named Ron Corvus. If I go to Japan, I'm going to learn something from all those guys. If I go to Mexico soon, I'll learn something from all those guys. And like I said earlier, with everything that shaped me into being the performer that I am and the wrestler that I am, it's because every step of the way I learned more from all those people. And just ask them to teach you something. Ask everyone to teach you something until, well, as I would say, until you know everything. But also realize that in professional wrestling, you will never know everything. And there will always be someone better than you, and there will always be someone working harder than you. So strive to be the hardest working guy in the room and the best performer in that locker room, and then find another locker room.
Is Jake Omen still in the jury, or is he on his way to Japan?
Jake Omen isn't exactly sure his place in the jury at the moment. Copenhagen Hangman was none too pleased that I lost to Nitro Green. However, I believe that there's still a solid basis for Jake Omen being in the jury. That I would like to return to Japan at some point in the next year. However, it's a very difficult scene to get in, and we'll see if that is possible. But realistically, by the end of 2020, I would like to have competed in at least 5 more countries. I would have liked to have put on another 10 pounds of muscle mass. I would like to work for bigger and bigger companies. That being said, professional wrestling in itself is ever changing. The landscape can change every day. I could get a contract offer tomorrow to go to one company and be exclusive tomorrow. But my focus now is just traveling as much as possible, returning to Denmark and performing there, and returning to Japan and competing there.
Thank you for your time. He seems like a nice guy.